So welcome to our chat with the authors of Letters for Pilgrimage, which is a Lenten devotional for teen girls from Park and Books. I'm Kathryn Reetzke, and I'm here today with the two authors, Sarah Gingrich and Alex Tallent. And I'm so pleased to be with both of you today. And we're recording this so that our audience can watch it later. And we'll also be posting some videos during Lent made by both authors to encourage and inspire your teen's journey, whether you are a teen watching or a parent of a teen, to encourage them during their journey through Lent. So I'm going to start with some questions, and I'll go ahead and start with Sarah. How did you come up with the idea of letters to encourage readers?
Well, it wasn't my idea, to be honest. Both Alex and I had contributed to a previous anthology called Darkness is as Light by Park and Books. And the editor had reached out to me and encouraged me to think of writing a devotional for young women. And as I started in on the work, I realized quickly that it needed another voice, another perspective. And so I asked Alex to join me in the project, and that was the best decision. But basically, we, as young women, we struggled and needed kind of support during the difficult season of adolescent life. And we, as Orthodox Christians, just have a heart for young teen girls and wanting to be a voice of encouragement to stay on the path of salvation.
Excellent. Alex, why don't you answer how the two of you know each other? So how did this collaboration come about between the two of you?
That's an easy question. We go to we're part of the same parish. So we go to the same church, and Sarah's godmother is also a good friend of mine. So she sort of pulled us together, and we're just like, I don't know, the troublesome trio at church. So it was kind of natural, her just coming up and be like, hey, can you help me with this? Because we were already friends and already had a history. So
that's excellent. Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to start with Alex this time. What were you like as a teenager?
You would start with me with this question. Let's see. Well, obviously, I still do, and I did then identify as Gothic. So I was obviously a very troubled teen. But I was also a really good student. So there's this weird juxtaposition of being, rebellious, but yet, straight A's, that sort of neurosis. So I was kind of, shy, a bit of a loner, but probably too smart for my own good. And religious, but not really sure what that meant. I kind of inherited a faith and was, working it out the hard way without a lot of guidance myself. So, I think I was one of those kids that you would see and be a little like standoffish with, I'm dressed in all black, I'm a little creepy, but I was a good kid. I didn't know what I was doing half the time. And so a lot of letters reflects that, my learning the hard way.
And what about you, Sarah? How was your teen experience?
I was kind of a hippie. No surprise there to anyone who knows me. I remember in particular showing up at my high school without any shoes on, and I had grass braided into my hair, and I had on a 1960s hippie dress that went down to my feet. I was really kind of searching for who I was by trying on different personalities. So I was in sports, so I had that kind of thing going on. And then I was in drama, so I was really into plays and costume design and all of that. And then I was throwing his frisbee out on the front lawn dressed as a hippie. So I don't really know. I think if you ask people from that time period of my life, they would say, well, which year? Because I kind of rotated through personalities. I wasn't very settled within myself.
I think that is true of most adolescents, that they are discovering themselves. I think I had a similar experience It's such a time for searching and finding understanding, and to have something like letters as a guide through a Lenten period. That's a wonderful gift that you all have given through your writing to teens. Okay, so we're going to start with Sarah this time. And who is your favorite saint and why?
Well, my favorite is Saint Mary of Egypt. She is my saint. She's one of the first saints that I learned about as I was exploring Orthodoxy with my family. And her icon is in our church right near the front. And I just saw this wild woman. Like, everyone else had, really tidy hairstyles going on, covered hair, robes. And then there was this half naked, wild haired lady who looked, absolutely darkened by the sun, and her hair all crazy. And I thought, I really want to know more about her. And when I found out that she had such a fantastically sinful life, and not fantastic in a good sense, but just really sinful life, and then came to be such a great lover of God and an ascetic hero, I was so immediately drawn to her. Plus, she walked across the water and she was buried by a lion. So there's just a lot to love there, but mostly that a great sinner became holy, and that gives me hope.
Thank you. What about you, Alex?
I gave a lot of thought to this question because I'm still exploring the saints myself, having not come from a tradition that values them. And I love St. Mary of Egypt. I smiled as soon as Sarah said that because I knew that's what she was going to say. But I think at the moment, now you ask me again in 5 years, it's going to be different. At the moment, I think probably my favorite would be St. Paul, the Apostle, mainly because, me not being Jewish, I'm his spiritual child in a way. I mean, he's the one who opened up the door for all of us non-Jewish people to come into the faith. And just, the type of personality he is, very, studious, and yet, through half of his life, totally getting it wrong and being very passionate about getting it wrong. I mean, I identify with that a lot. I've very passionately got things wrong and had to have, a divine encounter just to pull me back on the right path. So he was kind of one of the first, as I was going on the Orthodox journey, that I think my relationship changed with him from, everyone's got complicated relationships with St. Paul, depending on where you fall on the spectrum. But I felt like coming into Orthodoxy, it sort of all clicked with me. I'm like, this is what you were getting at. This is what you were trying to, teach everybody. And now I respect him a lot more than I did. So that's, where I'm at currently.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Let's see what our next question is. Okay. Well, we kind of answered this already, but Alex, I'll let you maybe explain further. How do you think knowing each other helped you write this book?
Oh, I don't think I could have done it myself. We both have such different experiences, and we've come to the faith in such different ways and at different times, and yet we're good friends. I mean, it's one of those things where differences complement, and I feel that with Sarah and I, our differences complement each other. And when you're writing something to a wide variety of girls, I'm hoping that, if you read something by me and you're like, I don't know that really hits me where I'm at, Sarah has something that speaks more to, what your situation is, and vice versa. I mean, it's nice to have someone who's different from you bring different perspectives and different experiences, especially to something like letters. It helps us get the wider spectrum of things that, girls experience.
Sure. Sarah, maybe you could touch on what was the motivation to make them letters as opposed to chapters? What was the motivation there?
Yeah, I think just recognizing where I was at in my teen years and how busy I was with either sports or extracurricular activities. I think giving people the option of stepping into a book where it's not going to be multiple pages of commitment, but maybe one page, at most a page and a quarter of material to read and sit with is a lot more approachable. We wanted our work to be hospitable to the busy teen and not something to slog through, but something like, okay, that is something that I can think about as I go through one more day of Lent. So yeah, I think that was our consideration there.
I'm glad that you did that as a church school director, because as I chose this for our teen class to read this Lent, I had that in mind because I know that our teens are very busy, involved in many different extracurriculars, also involved in the church and its worship services and activities. And so I appreciate that as an educator wanting to also share this with students. Let's go back to Alex. What do you hope readers will gain in this book?
Oh, I really hope that wherever you're at, that it just brings you closer to God and just an understanding of who he is and how he's personally involved in your life. I mean, I know that seems really broad, but really there's nothing more important than that. And if this book helps you in that journey towards Christ in any way, then it's a success. In my book, that's how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Sarah? What was your intention or hope for your readers?
Yeah, I think Alex said it perfectly. Just basically that we could come alongside teen girls and just as older sisters, not as perfect people. We are not arrived in any sense. But we have walked through the fires that some of them are going through, and we can come out on the other side and say, hey, keep your eyes on the path, keep your feet on the path, trust in Christ, and he will lead you through this. Because I think that's something that both Alex and I needed to hear at that age.
Excellent. Okay, Sarah, we'll start with you, and either of you can answer this because I don't know who maybe encouraged the artwork for this book, because I know it's very striking to me. So were either of you in touch with the illustrator, or how did that pairing of the artwork and the text come about?
So the artist, Ned Bustard, is local to us here, and he's a friend of mine. And I've always been struck by how he weaves symbolism into his pieces. They are always striking and very meaningful, much in the same way that our iconography is. Like, the more you look, the more you see, and the more you learn. And so we met together with Ned in a Zoom type meeting, and we talked about the stories that were important to us in the book. And he just kept a running list of those moments in the book, and then presented us with this compilation of images, which is just delightful. I don't know if you want to add to that, Alex.
No, I think you said it really well. I mean, yeah, you know him, and he did such a great job of taking the different stories and things that you read about and putting them in one solid piece of art, that then the pieces of it you see more and more as you go through the book. It's beautiful. I'm so happy with what he did.
We're not exactly flowers and pastels kind of ladies, so we wanted something that really spoke to, I don't know, an arresting presence on the cover.
I appreciated that as well. Okay, let's go to Alex on this one. And we kind of touched on this earlier, but did you grow up Orthodox or come to it later in life?
I did not grow up Orthodox. I was in a hodgepodge of different Protestant traditions. My family moved around a lot, so I've experienced a lot of that. I came to Orthodoxy 4 years ago. So I'm very new, and there's most likely girls who are going to read this who probably know more than I do. So it's very humbly I present you with this book, which is more about just my experience, than really anything about the Orthodox faith, I think, as I'm still learning myself.
And what about you, Sarah?
Yeah, I was raised in the Lutheran tradition and then served as a Mennonite missionary in my 20s. And so, yeah, I did not grow up in the Orthodox faith, but certainly the same Christ who is ever present within our faith was guiding all through that whole process towards home.
Yeah, thank you. I'm also a convert, and I grew up Church of Christ and converted through my studies of history at university. I took a a biblical history class, or a church history class, really. And from there, I had a few friends who were going to an Orthodox church in Nashville, and they said, "Hey, why don't you come with us this Sunday?" And from that moment on, and I knew that was where I needed to be. So I appreciate that as converts, that you're also providing, your journey in this book as well. Okay, let's see. Okay, so we'll start with Sarah. So how does the journey of Lent refresh you or challenge you?
In every possible way. Oh, I suffer. Okay, I am like a creature with very, I don't know, earthly needs of food comfort and ease. And yeah, anyway, so the whole fasting thing is super difficult for me. I didn't grow up with that discipline, but it's also refreshing in the same way that it breaks something open in me that needs to be broken open. I don't know if it's humility, because I see how much I'm governed by wanting like physical comfort, or just it's ascetic struggle, and I need that. More than my belly needs food, I need that. And so the services are very beautiful and touching. I really love the Wednesday service, the pre-sanctified gifts. The hymns of that really anchor me into what it means to follow Christ. And yeah, everything about it is challenging, and everything about it is what they call that bright sadness. And it's indescribable for me, other than to say that's exactly what it is. It's a bright sadness.
What about you, Alex? Is Lent a refreshment, a challenge, both?
I mean, it's definitely both. I think for me, what's interesting about Lent is that's actually the piece that started me on the journey to the Orthodox Church, was this desire for a tradition that walks you through to Easter, that doesn't just kind of throw Easter in your lap, but gives you a way of walking with Christ, preparing with Christ, going through everything he's going through up until that moment, and really preparing you, mind, body, and soul, for what that means for celebrating the resurrection. And, that's what Lent is. It's, a lot of introspection for yourself, a lot of, humility, a lot of discomfort, and yet it's cleansing also in a way, as you're emptying of yourself and getting ready to receive Christ in his life. And so I can say that it's refreshing because we're not in it yet. When we're in it, I mean, you feel it, it's hard. I'm like Sarah, man, I miss cheese so much.
Yes!
It's so hard. But I mean, by the time you get to Pascha, you can't even describe, you've touched the holy in some way, and you can't touch the holy without going through the difficulty that Lent can be. And so, yeah, it's a challenge, but it's worth it. It's worth every step of the way.
Well, and doesn't it it teaches you to really appreciate the things that you already loved? Like, I don't know that I really loved cream and cheese and butter and roast chicken and all of that before I had to deny myself of those things.
Yeah.
Now it's when I can have them, I'm celebrating, like it's a feast.
Yeah. Pascha does mean a whole lot more that way. When you've been denying yourself, you do feel like you're celebrating. It's special. It's much more special.
Yeah.
I think
maybe we just love cheese that much.
I think it's also important, kind of in our instant gratification culture that we have, that, we can order something on our phone and it comes to our house sometimes that day, whether it's, our groceries or some treat or something, that waiting, a purpose for waiting. I know that has always struck me about Orthodoxy too. And these seasons, either whether it's Lent or Advent, of, it is a journey. It's not just something that you can instantly arrive upon. And Sarah, you had mentioned the hymns on the Wednesday night. When I was in the choir, I remember we would all get so excited before Lent began to practice "Now the Powers," we would, get to practice this beautiful hymn. And then when we actually got to sing it, that's one of my favorite services too, especially because it's dark. The lights are not all on because it's a Vespers. And well, I think it switches over in the middle. And so, yeah, just the beauty of the services. And as Alex said, it's taking you step by step. And I liked how this book makes me think so much of a journey. Okay, you're preparing for this trip. And if you've seen any of the kind of clips that I've made for the website and the social media pages, I really kind of latched onto that concept of, okay, a journey, we're traveling, we're going from the beginning of Lent through to Pascha and then Bright Week. What does that look like for us as Christians? And now I want to ask kind of a fun question, which is, when you go on a journey, on a physical journey, what is your favorite item to pack? So what is your must-have journey item? We can start with Alex.
A good book.
Good book.
Because sometimes, I've been on a lot of long plane rides. So, sometimes you need, something to help with those long periods of waiting. So that's the thing that I'm always thinking about. There's this stuff, you have to, like your clothes, but I'm also, okay, what book am I going to bring? Because sometimes, even though that it's because while you're on the journey, you have moments of peace you don't always have in your busy life. So you have the time to sit and, enjoy reading a book in peace and whatnot. So just that's the one that I always think very hard about.
And what about you, Sarah? What's your item?
A journal to write in, and maybe some colored pencils to make sketches, or I can press flowers in the pages and keep them as mementos of my journeys. Like I always need something to write on, because I feel like any really unique experience that I have, I want to capture it in ink or a pencil and preserve it so that I can revisit it and feel those things again.
Excellent. One more travel question. What is your most favorite destination that you've traveled to, and why? So we can start with Sarah.
So my husband and I and our 3 kids at the time, we took a rambling road trip when we lived in Puerto Montt, Chile, over the Andes Mountains into Argentina and back and forth all the way south to the Strait of Magellan, crossed over the Strait of Magellan in a ferry with our van, and went into Tierra del Fuego, the land of fire. Doesn't that just sound exactly as cool as it is? And we got down there and we went to the southernmost city of the world, Ushuaia, Argentina. And that is where Charles Darwin set forth in the Beagle, right from that bay on his explorations. I swear I could smell Antarctica from there. And it was the most extreme place. We could use our small children as kites. The wind was so strong. And all of the trees just grew with limbs on one side, because these ones never had a chance because they were getting the whipping winds coming around the tip of South America. Wild, just absolutely wild. There were penguins there. There was flamingos, whales, and it's just nuts and awesome. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll go to Alex now. What is your favorite destination or trip or journey that you've taken?
It's hard to pick a favorite, but I think probably the close number one would be Karoizawa, Japan. I'm just getting all nostalgic thinking about it. My husband and I have traveled to Japan many times, and Karoizawa is this beautiful place in the mountains where many of the locals will go during the really hot, humid summer months, and they'll go there for some coolness. And it's just, mountains and these old forests and rocks covered in moss everywhere, and just these beautiful shops just lining the street. And it's like the closest you can get to a small town feel in the metropolis that is Japan. And I just fell in love with that town. I would just go back anytime. But I will say also, very close to Karoizawa is Osaka, Japan, and particularly in Takasago area, because I have some wonderful friends there, and it was just the warmth of the people in that place is just fantastic. So I can't just say one or the other. They're both very dear to my heart, but I would go back in a heartbeat any minute. I would just be there.
Wonderful. And we'll go to Sarah first. How did writing this book change your perspective on Lent, or did it? Did it change your perspective on Lent?
I think it reinforced all the parts of the journey, because we definitely tried to make this not just a book about Lent, but our journey to Christ. And that involves all of our life. I think learning about what more of the services and each of the special Sunday themes meant was very meaningful. It really did feel like I'm finding more of the milestones of that journey through Lent more significant because of writing this. It was a very immersive project.
What about you, Alex? Did it change your perspective on the journey of Lent?
Well, in just a very practical way. I mean, I know every Sunday is devoted to something in Lent. Well, writing this forced me to figure out more of the ones that, I mean, I just didn't know. I mean, some of them are obvious, like the Sunday, the Holy Cross, that's pretty obvious. But then, some of the other Sundays of, this saint or that, not having come from that background, I'm like, well, who's this person and why are they so important that we've devoted an entire Sunday to them during Lent? Well, to write this book, I had to answer that question. And there's a chapter that I wrote where I had to research who this was. And it was so meaningful to me, realizing that actually who he was and what he did had an impact on me without me even knowing it. Like I'm, somewhat of a spiritual child of his because he paved this path, years and years and years ago. So that helped. It definitely helped me understand more just the whole of Lent by studying these different pieces of saying, this is why we do this. This is why they're so important. And yeah, they do deserve their own Sunday in Lent. Wow.
Awesome. I love that. Are there any plans for an Advent book? Or what could there be plans for an Advent book?
We could be persuaded. Yes.
We're still recovering from writing a book in a month and a half.
Yeah. I think, if people wanted one, give us a heads up. I'm sure Sarah and we can knock our heads together. It'd probably be good for us. Learn more about Advent.
Well, I love that. And so just to show the cover again, Letters for Pilgrimage, written by Sarah and Alex, who I'm with this evening. I really appreciated you all coming to chat about your book, and we're looking forward to the short video clips that you're going to share with all of us during Lent. So there'll be a 10 to 15 minute video each week during Lent from either Sarah or Alex on a variety of topics to encourage teens and parents and readers and whoever might be reading this during the Lenten season to encourage you throughout this spiritual journey. And I so appreciate both of you coming on to answer these questions. Is there anything that you would like to add or close with? Anything else for the Lenten journey?
Well, to quote C.S. Lewis in the Chronicles of Narnia, further up and further in. Here we go. Lent's coming. Let's do this. We'll do it together.
But no second breakfast.
No. No, this is not a Hobbit journey. It's a little different.
Oh, well, I so appreciate both of you being on this evening. And we'll be sharing this on February 10th. And if any of our viewers have questions, I'm sure both of you will be on our Facebook page to answer any questions that our viewers might have. So again, thank you so much for being on this evening.